Hello, I am Kenesha L. Davey, Associate Director for the DC Creative Affairs Office. Welcome to our Care for Creatives community conversation featuring Dr. Mary DeRate and Layla Nielsen as they discuss the relationship between social media and mental health. After watching this episode, head on over to creativeaffairsdc.com to learn more about our Care for Creatives program. Through our partnership with the George Washington University, we are able to provide pay what you can mental health services for all local creatives.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mary DeRate, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Care for Creatives community conversation. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Layla Nielsen about social media and mental health. It's such an important topic. Layla, could you take a minute and just introduce yourself to people?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a great topic, taking into consideration everything that's happening in the world. A little bit about me. I am a native Washingtonian, went to Howard, went to Georgetown, been in the marketing space for over 15 years, and excited to announce that I just celebrated my 3-year anniversary of launching my agency, Ellen & Co., where we provide full-service digital marketing services for brands who focus on multicultural audiences and women. So this conversation is so important to the audiences that we serve, and looking at social media as a tool versus a negative platform, I'm always here to lend my voice to support that.
That's awesome. That's so exciting about your anniversary. Congratulations. Sometimes we need to give context for what we're here for, and that we're here in terms of the Care for Creatives program. And I'd like to just share with people a little bit about what that program is to start out with. So the Care for Creatives program is a partnership between the George Washington University Counseling Department and the Creative Affairs Office in Washington, D.C. There is a main purpose to this program, which is to provide mental health support for the creative community. And we do that with two main avenues. The first is by providing pay what you can therapy for anyone in the creative community who is in need, entrepreneurs, anyone who needs to have therapy. You can contact the Community Counseling Services Center on George Washington University's campus and be provided with that. The second are community conversations, and that is offering the creative community access to mental health information and different topics in terms of improving mental health. So in terms of that, today is a great opportunity because, as you and I both know, social media definitely impacts our mental health, and access to computers and screens and all of that impacts our mental health. So maybe what you could do is start out with us today, Layla, by telling us a little bit about what social media is, and what all it encompasses.
Absolutely. So social media, well, first, thank you so much for being a part of that program. That sounds amazing. And I think as creatives, there needs to be a space to share and to be vulnerable. And I think that program really solves for that and creates access points. So kudos to you and the team for creating such an amazing program. So social media to me is a tool. And I always talk to brands and even my own daughters about social media being an opportunity for you to share who you are, the essence of who you are, your creativity, your voice. However, I compare it to say exactly what you would say on social media, what you would say on the street, what you will say in the public. And if you will not say certain things in front of people on New York Avenue, scream it to the top of your lungs, then don't say it on social media because it has the same effect. The difference between screaming on New York Avenue, you can only get the attention of individuals that are in earshot, right? But social media, it goes way beyond earshot. It can travel and really stick to you. And whether that content is positive, negative, you have no control over. So social media truly is a tool to get out a message that you intend to get out, that you are truly clear on the intent and the impact that this potentially has. And it allows you to have a presentation of yourself visually through video, through pictures, through GIFs and memes and long form and short form video. So for me, social media is a tool to reflect who you are as a personal brand to the world.
Yeah. No, I think what you just said is so important. This idea that what you would say in person, like don't say anything on social media you wouldn't say in person, because it is putting yourself out there. It is presenting who you are to the world. And so if you can't, if you wouldn't say it to someone's face, if you wouldn't say it like I loved your statement of scream it out on New York Avenue, then don't say it on social media.
Absolutely.
I think it's one of the things about social media that it impacts so many more people. You know, years ago, if you had an opinion about something, it may upset people around you or it may impact people around you. But now it impacts people in other countries. It impacts people so far afield from where you actually are that we actually potentially should have more of a responsibility for what we're saying.
Yeah, you open yourself up to other people's opinions. And whether or not the topic that your discussion needs other people's opinions is where you should distinguish whether or not you want to have that on social media. You know, there are great opportunities where you can, you know, share important facts and statistics and opinions potentially that can help push a conversation forward in a positive light or to bring light to a problem. You know, we wouldn't have had the movement that we have now with the Black Lives Matter movement or all of that if it wasn't for social media and the attention to all of the crimes and things like that that were happening to our communities. Social media was the center of that. And so there's great ways that we can use it. So I truly believe that social media is a tool. And if you approach it as a tool, and a tool is there to fix something or to create something, and if that is not your intention, social media isn't the place to start.
Yeah. No, I really, that's an important statement, because one of the things as a mental health professional that I kind of sit with as I deal with social media is the idea that we can use social media in ways that we're not even aware to kind of work through trauma. And when people have experienced a lot of challenges in life and have significant trauma responses, not PTSD, but trauma responses, social media can fill a hole, right? It can help you. It can make use of your need for connection and reinforcement, and it can fill a hole and it can start using you. And what I love about what you just said is that when we are intentional about it, when we use it as a tool, it is there to be used by us, not to allow it to kind of use us. And try to fix something. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And then also keeping in mind the algorithms that you have no control over. And so, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, they're all releasing algorithms. I promise you, it feels like every other day that shifts the behavior of what you see and what content is, you know, more visible in your feed than not. It changes all the time. And so a lot of what is very difficult for individuals to understand is they don't control that piece. So that's the part where you have to use social media as a tool and create environments that are beneficial to you. So if you're dealing with a mental health crisis or a difficult situation, a lot of times the algorithms will double down on the content that you're putting out. So I'll give you a perfect example. If I'm having a horrible day and I said something about that in however I want to, like I reposted a meme or my caption indicates that I'm having a bad day, that will trigger something in the algorithm and I will start seeing more content that is like that. And so when I'm meant by being intentional, come to social media to change your mood for the good and start seeking out those types of content that will help feed you and make you better and make you feel better. But if you go to social media to complain and to only be in that space and not seek out remedies, then the algorithms will work against you because you will only see content that that is negative, and that's only going to hurt you in the long run because your environment, social media, or your bedroom, if you don't put yourself in the right environment, it will affect your mental health. And so for the good or the bad, right? But come to social media intentionally so that you can, like you said, fill those holes, but you have to seek it out. So that goes back to being intentional and using social media as a tool. How can it feed you? But you have to come to social media with that in mind.
So I'm going to say that those algorithms scare me sometimes. And I feel like they're an opportunity for self-reflection because there have been times when things have popped up in my feed that apparently the algorithm thought I would be interested in, where I went, I need to rethink my life if this is what I'm looking at. The algorithm thinks I should be watching this. I need to really think about what I'm paying attention to. But I think it's important what you just said about kind of if you're focusing on the negative constantly. And there's a term that has been coined in the last few years around social media called trauma dumping. Mm-hmm. And there is a difference between venting and trauma dumping. And, trauma dumping is just getting on there and everything's bad. Here's the bad thing. This is bad. That's bad. This is all my, kind of self-focused negativity. And what we know about the human brain is that just reinforces a narrative. Mm-hmm. Without another person there present with you to engage in a discussion, it just turns into reinforcement of your personal narrative, which can continue your brain down a path toward even ever increasing anxiety and depression. So go ahead.
I was going to say, it's the same thing, negative Nancy, right? There's that one person in your environment that if you're in a bad mood, do not be around because all they're going to do is make you feel worse, right? Mm-hmm. You intentionally seek out the individuals that you want to laugh and have fun with because they're going to have a good time. It's the same thing with social media. A lot of times we want to say, social media is this negative thing, but it's a reflection of us as a society. And so if we are coming to social media and doing the trauma dumping, all you're going to attract is more trauma and more negativity because that's the energy. And also remember, all these platforms are for-profit business. They want to keep you on social media as long as possible to get those impressions so they can deliver these ads to these brands that are paying all kinds of dollars to get your eyeballs, right? And so keeping that in mind allows you to understand that this is, again, a tool. Be intentional, separate, stay away from the negative Nancy's if you're in a bad mood. Check out, your friends that are happy, the ones that you want to go hang out with, seek them out so that you have full control. And I think the more you educate individuals, like conversations like this, people will start to understand how dynamic and potentially negative and catastrophic social media can be if you, like you said, if you don't take full control of the situation, of the platforms and the content that you share.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the facts about our brains is that our brains are focused on negative things. It is in our evolutionary interest to remember things that are bad or scary or dangerous. And so I like to say that our brains are Teflon for good things, meaning it slides right off, and Velcro for bad. Mm-hmm. And so so our default setting is negative. So if we are consistently allowing a mindless engagement with social media instead of intentional and mindful engagement with social media, then it will eventually go downhill. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is definitely a practice that we need to use intentionally, thoughtfully, and be mindful of what we are putting into that algorithm, to that environment. Keeping in mind, to your point, your very, very well taken point, that these are companies who are making money and selling ads and selling our time.
Absolutely. And as creatives, you know, you're selling your artwork, you're a performer, you're doing murals. I mean, you can use social media to really drive your business. And so social media is not all bad. They're created all new revenue streams for individuals. Influencers are making 7-figure checks off of social media. And I think that's amazing, because now you have cut out the middleman. Now you have the opportunity to go and create your own environment and business opportunities leveraging social media. And if it's done right, it can be very fruitful for you as a creative. However, if you get caught in the web of what you said, of the trauma dumping, it will be all for nothing. You will distract from your creativity. You will distract from why you intentionally wanted to be there in the first place, who you want to be known for, if you focus on the superficial things and not be intentional about your creativity.
Yeah. You're bringing up a really important distinction between there's a personal use of social media, and then there's our business use of social media. And I'm wondering if it would be okay to ask you how you kind of make that distinction in your own life, and how you kind of set boundaries around it. And then also, because you are an expert in this, how you use it for business to help you be more successful.
Absolutely. So I am a firm believer that you should keep them separate, church and state. The only exception is if you yourself are the influencer, you are the brand, right? So you talk about your kids, you talk about your husband, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, and that's what you're selling, a lifestyle. So that's a unique perspective. But if you have a business, you're selling a product or service like I do, I keep them separate. And the reason being is that I share pictures of my family, my kids, my mother, my husband, all of that on my personal accounts. I treat Facebook and Instagram as somewhat of a photo album of me and my experiences, my personal goals, and things like that. And I very rarely share something super negative, simply because I'm just not that person. I'm very reserved in person. So it goes back to my original point: act on social media the same way you would in person. So I'm not telling all my business to a person I met on the street. So why would I post it on social media? I share with you on Instagram what I would if I had dinner with you for the first time. And that's how I operate. I have my business separate because that's an opportunity for brands to really see a reflection of the work that I do, my background, my team, things like that. And so sometimes there's crossover, like if we had a big win with a client, or we achieve something amazing, it's a personal goal that I achieve, like in my career, right? So I share that on my personal account, but I will package it differently on my business account. So that's how I keep those two separate. But it's unique, like I said, if you're an influencer yourself, where you're selling a lifestyle and you're advising people on how to better live their lives, then that's where you can have somewhat of a hybrid. But I'm always telling people to be very cautious about the intimate details you share with the public, because you also have to be strong enough and confident enough in yourself to receive the feedback. Because when you open it up, and it's just like any celebrity. So celebrities deal with this all the time. Everyone wants to share their opinion about your life, even though they're sitting behind a screen. And so you have to be strong enough and be able to say, I can handle this, right? Because you don't have any control after that point. So that's how I distinguish personal from business. And I'm intentional about keeping those two separate.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is, I try to do a similar thing. And I pretty much use Instagram for personal and I use LinkedIn for professional. And the overlap is usually only sharing some professional things in my personal, never sharing personal in my professional. So that makes a lot of sense. And you're bringing up an important point about boundaries. And oftentimes boundaries are misunderstood, or they are limited in terms of, okay, yes, there's a boundary. We'll say like there's a boundary between my personal and my professional. Or to your point, sometimes there's a very thin boundary between the personal and the professional, especially when you're a creative and an entrepreneur in the creative community. But I think it's important that we talk about this idea of feedback to social media and its impact on our mental health, because as you pointed out, if we don't set boundaries around how we take the feedback, and by boundaries around that, I mean, if we don't have kind of, I don't know, the only word that's coming to my mind is cognitive structures, which might be a little too clinical, but if we don't have cognitive structures around what to do with that feedback, then it's basically just hitting us. I like to think of it, boundaries are like a cell wall. I don't know if that's too scientific, but a cell wall has like a permeable, a semi-permeable, and a non-permeable boundary. And when we have a boundary that is completely open, anything can come in, anything can get at us in that center, any comment, any response, any engagement affects our sense of self.
Absolutely.
That's that totally permeable boundary. And that leaves us open for extreme hits on our mental health. But when we have too rigid of a boundary, then we miss out on all those positive things you were talking about, all the good things about social media. When we don't let anything in, then we are isolated and we don't get the access. So having that semi-permeable idea that some things can get in and some things don't, and we have a clear idea of what we're going to let in. I often say I have a rule of 1/3, which is a third of the people are always going to say it's great. A third of the people are always going to say it sucks. And a third of the people aren't paying attention. And that's all about those people and not about what you actually intended. So you get to decide which one you're going to listen to.
Absolutely. And I think people need to ask themselves, why are you sharing this piece of content?
Yeah.
What do you want? And, as a brand, you share content because you want to generate sales. You want to, build your list, or you want engagement, you want attendance at your event, right? That's purposeful, right? So if you just broke up with your girlfriend and you're sad about it, and you are posting because, one, you want attention from her. There's so many different layers, right? There's attention from her. You want sympathy from friends. You want to, get it all out, and you just needed to do like a dump. However, when you do that, it's almost like a wound, right? If you fell down and cut yourself, and you don't clean it out and put a Band-Aid on it, you're going to add all kind of gunk to it, germs, all that, and it's going to turn into probably an infection and all kind of ugliness. That's what happens to social media when you do a trauma dump like that. Yeah. You're not putting any boundaries. You're not putting a Band-Aid on it, all of that. You're just opening it up for all types of germs to infect your wound. And that's what happens. And so we really have to think about our boundaries. Again, back to my original point, what would you say in front of people? Yeah. 9 times out of 10, you will not share with somebody you just met that you just broke up with somebody, or you had a beef with a friend, or you just got fired from your job. You wouldn't say that, right? Because you'll be embarrassed because you can see their reaction, right? There is this false sense of disconnect when you're on social media. And that's why people are bullies on social media. Most bullies on social media, if you saw them, they're punks. They will never say what they said on social media to your face. I was always played around in my head. I was like, I should start this app that just tells people where they live and just show up and like say it to my face, right? I promise you, they will never do it. This will never happen. This is just like how you sit in fantasy land. But please do this, because there's that disconnect, right? But if you confront them, they will never say what they said on social media, right? And so understanding that if you are hurt, you have an open wound. What do you need to heal this wound? And that's how you need to approach social media.
Right. Because if you keep going back to it as a way of trying to heal that wound, or thinking that you're going to heal that wound, or that sharing it, putting it out there to get attention for it is going to somehow resolve it, you're just reinforcing it and making it worse. I loved your metaphor about a cut, because it just draws germs, it draws infection, it draws all of that in, and you're going to end up feeling a lot worse.
Yeah. We keep thinking that social media is this construct that we can control. We cannot. So you have to do your best to control yourself and the environment that you're in, and making sure that the content that you share is a reflection of you. You don't want to put out content that can come back and bite you 5 years from now. There was, in the very early stages of social media, parents were losing their mind because kids were posting all types of, revealing things about themselves. And that followed them all the way through college and into their adult life. Because once you post it, you might delete it, but someone can take a screenshot. There's so many ways that people can hurt you with that. And so you would not do this in person. So don't do it on social media.
Absolutely. So this is bringing my mind to another aspect of this, which is kind of a controversial question at this point, although in my mind it's not. But this idea of being able to be addicted to social media and the impact that it could have on us. And I guess I'm wondering what your perspective is on that. Do you think that people can be addicted to social media? Do you feel like there's a way we could know if we are?
So I have a rule of thumb for myself. Sometimes, because I work in this space, I get overwhelmed with social media because I'm doing it for myself, I'm doing it for clients, et cetera. It can get a little overwhelming. But when you cannot stop yourself from looking at your phone, or that little light for notifications come on, and you have to respond and you have to go after it, then you definitely need to take a break. And there's an addiction there because you need that validation. You need to find out who's talking about me, who responded, who's saying what. You want to feel involved when technically you're not. And it's this false sense of connection, right? And I truly believe that, there's all types of data that support this, that we, just like having unread emails, like that used to be my thing. I could not end my day with a whole bunch of emails that I haven't gone through. Like I needed all of them to be gray, get through everything. But then I realized I became a slave to that. It was ruining my day because I would unplug, go cook dinner or do whatever I was doing after, and I would think about it. That's when I knew something was wrong. And so I intentionally leave my phone in my office after a certain hour. I bought myself an old school alarm clock because I was using my phone as my alarm for so long. I was like, nope, old school. I'm going to go get an old school alarm clock because people should not have that much access to you. We have this false sense of connection with social media. When actuality, we're more alone than we've ever been. And so we need to seek out personal touch, like actually hug people and be around people, because that helps us. It gets us going. It gets us, that energy, the chemicals in our body start to act differently. And you feel happy, you feel the joy. However, when you are stuck on social media seeking this validation, did they comment? Did they like? Why didn't they like this? And things like that. You start to question yourself, you self-doubt, all of those things start to come into play. And then you can't be yourself. You can't be creative. You can't go out and take that amazing picture or make that amazing song because you're so sad or unhappy or you're looking for validation. So there is, a level of, and everyone is different, but there are different levels of addiction with social media. And if you have this instinct to constantly check your phone and get, check email and things like that, then you have to take those intentional steps to disconnect.
Yeah. There's a thing that happens inside of our brain with I think it's hormone dopamine, that when when you see a smiling face, when someone touches you, when you engage, I loved your point about the hug. We all need more hugs. When you engage with other human beings, you get a dopamine hit. But when and if you watch the scientific research about it, the dopamine hit for interpersonal connection is pretty high. The dopamine hit for seeing a notification pop up on your phone is like off the charts. It spikes so high that it is like a drug. It spikes as high as some drugs. So
it doesn't last.
Right. It lasts shorter and it sinks you lower, because for every dopamine spike, there is a residual or a rebound reaction of a lack of it that goes down. So for the higher they are, the lower they fall. So absolutely. I loved your suggestions about limiting your access to your phone and having a real alarm clock. That's a great.
Old school, hit it, keep it going. Forget all the fancy ringtones, just the annoying buzz. Just get that and disconnect, because we forget that we're just human beings made up of the same connective tissue. And social media is an amazing tool. However, it doesn't solve our inner hurt and our pain. It doesn't solve it, right? And so we have to be intentional about that. It's so funny. I find myself hugging for longer. Like typically you're like, oh, hug and you keep it moving. No, when I see my friends, I'm like, oh my God, I need this. I need to touch you. I need to like feel you on my body. It's such an amazing feeling, right? And I think that we as a community, we are so disconnected at this point that we're going to see the residual effects of the pandemic. And then I think people got hooked on social media during that time, and even more so. And I'm very concerned about what it's going to look over the next 10 years for our children. And even some of, even adults who can't be objective and understand what's real and fake. Now there's a merging of what's reality and what's not reality, and which is very scary, because this will also impact how we begin to interact in real person, right? And so it'll be interesting to see what this behavior, the results of this is going to be like for our communities going forward.
Yeah. I think honestly, Layla, we could have a whole other discussion about the difference between reality and not reality, personal reality. But I think too, this idea of physically setting boundaries around our phone time and making sure that we are prioritizing in-person engagement. I think some of the things that I have tried to do, one is taking all of my social media apps and putting them in a smaller folder on my phone all together, and labeling it. I actually labeled it vanity, but you can label it whatever you want as a way to just remind myself that when I engage in those, I have to go for them. They're not just easily accessible on any, screen. And then also sometimes I think if you can afford it, if you have access to it, having a separate phone for work and for your personal life, that allows you to kind of keep those apps and those notifications for work available to you during work hours.
Yeah, and you can control your settings, right? It goes back to being intentional, right? Be intentional about your life, period, and that includes social media. I guilt myself. So on my phone, I have the Bible app next to the Instagram app.
Nice.
So when I wake up and I'm like, I need to do my morning meditation, and you instinctively want to see what's happening on social media, it's right next to the Bible app. So Layla, you are intentionally ignoring the Bible. If you do, so I guilt myself. I literally put it next to each other on my phone, on my home screen, so that I can force myself to stay positive through my day. And Instagram, it's hit or miss. I might get the best meme that is going to motivate my week, right? Yeah. Or I can see horrible news or someone talking trash to one another or something like that on social media. And like you said, negative news, that clickbait, all of that stuff, we react faster to that than we would with positive content. So I intentionally put boundaries in place, obstacles for me to go through, for me to get to social media. And that starts with me guilting myself. So putting those, pieces in play so that you can be intentional about how you want to show up today is very important.
Yeah, I love that. I might need to move the Bible app next to my
Yes,
my vanity file to keep my brain focused on what's important here.
exactly.
I think too, I've tried, and I know we're going to kind of wrap up here in a few minutes, but there's a podcast that I love, the Huberman Lab, and he talks about mornings and how starting your morning without looking at your phone for the first 30 minutes that you're awake is a really powerful boundary to set, that it allows your eyes and your brain to wake up and connect in a way that is extremely important to neuroplasticity and cognitive, maintaining your cognitive level. So I think that's something else I've tried to do, is just not look at my phone, not look at any screens, just get up and do other things in the morning, and then try, although it's really hard for me at night when I'm at home, to just kind of put the phone aside and try to pay attention to whatever I'm doing, or reading before you go to sleep instead of watching TV. But
yeah, so I have friends who joke Layla, I still buy books. Everyone's into ebooks. I was I can't, it doesn't absorb. It doesn't feel I don't laugh as hard. I don't cry as hard about the stories. It's something that's wrong for me. I need the smell of the book. I don't know what it is. It does that for me. So reading, I definitely agree with. And then waking up in the morning and not touching your phone, I absolutely 110% agree with that. Every morning when I wake up, I make my cup of coffee and I sit outside in my backyard for 15 minutes in silence, just with my thoughts. And that helps me. It helps me understand, level set for the day, getting my day together. And even, how do I feel? Being very intentional with acknowledging how I feel. Was I angry when I went to bed? Am I still angry? How do I want to deal with it? Being intentional about how to capture those, because our mind can play tricks on us if we allow it.
Yeah. That's its sole goal, is to play tricks on us. It's trying to convince us of lots of stuff.
Exactly.
So I know that this topic is just really important, and I hope that we have been able to kind of provide some information to people about how to be more intentional and be more mindful of how we're using it and how we're separating kind of the work life from the personal life in terms of social media. And, it occurs to me that I think for some people, the work life part might be harder to put boundaries around, and for others, the personal life part of it might be harder to put boundaries around.
Yeah, and especially we're all working from home, so it's so difficult to disconnect. But I think the key pieces is, the key piece of this conversation that I want people to walk away with is, one, making sure that you understand your purpose, your personal purpose, your business goals, understand that, write them down. And then second, how can social media help you reach those goals? Personally and business-wise, and write those down. Go to YouTube. There's so many videos out there on how to best leverage social media. And if you do it right, it can be a great revenue potential for you as a creative, new fans, new opportunities, partnerships, etc. But it can totally distract people from who you are if you don't take full control and set those boundaries. So I would say those three things will allow you to show up authentically and allow you to create a space that you can invite people into and you can have an authentic conversation with.
Absolutely. So I'm wondering, Layla, if you could share, do you have any recommendations for people on books, podcasts? Because also, by the way, you and I are so similar, I'm learning. I also need a book. I need a physical book. My whole office is full of books. I need the real book. Do you have any books or podcasts or websites or anything that you would recommend to people who are kind of hearing us talk about this and going, wow, I should maybe think more about this?
Absolutely. So as far as books, I don't have one like off the top of my head, but I am a YouTube junkie. And you can find and learn anything you want on YouTube University. And I got into digital marketing by mistake, and I taught myself HTML. I taught myself, Adobe and all these other platforms by going on YouTube and teaching myself, because I knew that I needed these things to be successful. So as a creative, as you're thinking through how to best leverage social media, my first step would be go to social media. And shameless plug, I just launched my own podcast called Content is Queen. And I sit down with amazing women in the marketing, communication, and entertainment space who are content creators in their own right. And I talk to them about their journey. And we discover in those conversations gems that they've identify that help them propel their career. And we talk about their losses as well. Like, what do they learn from their failures? And so it's a great opportunity for individuals who are in this space who want to become content creators. And that's a very broad term, but who want to be content creators on social media or just period, how to, follow a blueprint from individuals who have been there. And so again, my first step would be to hit up YouTube, put in those search terms, and get to learning, and be intentional about feeding yourself with information that will make you show up to be great.
Awesome. I do have a book recommendation. There's one called Logged In and Stressed Out by Paula Derlofsky. That can be something you can recommend for the content side of it. I'll just recommend for the mental health side of it.
Absolutely.
There's also one called Irresistible. I haven't read that one, but it's been recommended to me by Adam Alter. Mm-hmm. As an option for people. And I always recommend the Huberman Lab. He is a neuroscientist out of Berkeley, and he covers so many different mental health topics, basically just how does your brain work? And he has talks about this specific topic. So I highly recommend the Huberman Lab. So Layla, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I'm wondering if you could share with people, like how do people get in contact with you? How do they, if they just listen to you today, as I did, and are like, wow, I need to know more from Layla. Absolutely. How do they connect?
Absolutely. So feel free to visit my website, LaylaNielsen.com. That's LaylaNielsen.com. Follow me on social media. Personally, it's Mrs. Layla, MRSLAYLA. And then for business, it's Layla Nielsen Co., LaylaNielsenCo, across all platforms. So feel free to reach out to me there on social, DM me, follow me, I'll follow you back. I love to share this space because social media is such a scary term for people. However, if you see the results of those who do it well, you truly can make this a great opportunity for you to impact people's lives in a positive way. And if that's your goal, then social media is the best tool to do that cost effectively. So I encourage people to not walk away from social media, but create spaces where you can use it as a tool.
Beautiful. Excellent. Final advice.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Layla, for talking with us today. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate all of your wise advice on this topic. And thank you for watching this Care for Creatives community conversation. To learn more about the Creative Affairs Office and Care for Creatives, visit creativeaffairsdc.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you to Dr. Mir and Layla for participating in our Care for Creatives community conversation. And thanks to you all for joining us. In closing, here are a few helpful resources. The Care for Creatives program, Pay What You Can Counseling. Learn more at creativeaffairsdc.com. Be intentional about what you share and consume on social media. Set social media boundaries. Take social media breaks. Prioritize in-person engagement. Don't look at your phone the first 30 minutes you are awake. Learn new skills on YouTube. Check out the Huberman Lab podcast. Check out Content is Queen podcast. Logged In, Stressed Out, How Social Media is Affecting Your Mental Health and What You Can Do About It by Paula Derlofsky. Irresistible, The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked by Adam Alter.